Hello, everybody. Yesterday we saw the Cincinnati Bengals win yet again in the playoffs. So I wanted to talk a little bit here quickly about what scares me about the Bengals and what the Browns should learn from the Bengals' quick rise, as you can see in the banner below. Um, Happy to be here. Happy to be able to talk about this. I know as Browns fans, it's kind of irritating to see this happen, see the Cincinnati Bengals all of a sudden become the team this year that we thought the Browns would be. But it is what it is. I think there are plenty of lessons to learn from this. So the Bengals had an interesting year this year. Last year, Joe Burrow looked very, very promising, ends up getting injured, and there was a lot of questions, right? Should they draft Panay Sewell? The Jamar Chase conversation was there. They end up going Jamar Chase. Now, you look at the effects from that. And to me, this is one of the biggest things when it comes to the point of what the Browns should learn from the Bengals. We're heading into an offseason where there are going to be a lot of options at the wide receiver position. I'm on the record saying that I believe 13 should be a wide receiver no matter what you do for agency, unless you go out and you get a guy like a Devontae Adams, which is just not going to happen. So, to me, the way the Browns should address this whole situation, sign a wide receiver or two in free agency, and then draft one or two in the draft. Now, when you look at the future right now at the wide receiver position for the Browns, Anthony Schwartz and Donovan Peoples Jones are really the only long term guys, unless you want to count Demetric Felton in that room. I know he's kind of a hybrid between both running back and wide receiver, but aside from those two, Rashard Higgins is going to be gone. You look at what's going on with Jarvis Landry, it seems more and more likely that he will not be back. And it's very unfortunate. It's sad. I hate to see that, but I think it's reality at this point. So, that room needs to be heavily retooled, re upgraded, reloaded, whatever you want to call it. And I believe that Donovan Peoples Jones is a great receiver. I think he's right now in a developing process, but I think if you give it another year or two, he will get into a great receiver role. And Matt Jenkins says, "Who day?" So that's what we're here to talk about. So, looking at what the Bengals did with Jamar Chase, and this is what I think is the biggest thing for the Browns this year, right? I believe that there are guys in this draft who can give you a Jamar Chase impact. I think that if Jamison Williams never got hurt, I think that he's one of the guys, and I think Garrett Wilson is one of the guys. I know there's a lot of love for Traylon Burks and for Drake London. I'm not a believer in those guys right now. I think that's more of a developmental thing. I think the Browns need a guy right now. And yeah, Jamison Williams' injury is going to play a big factor in that on where he goes. It's probably unlikely he goes 13, especially if Garrett Wilson is there. But to me, 13's got to be receiver because you look at the talent there, the game breaking ability of these guys. That's all you got from Jamar Chase this year. And yes, everybody will say, well, Burrow had a connection with Chase, right? Going back to LSU. Here's the deal. Jamar Chase is somebody who has been elite for a long time, right? And he's been somebody who's been uber talented and all around great for a long time. Matt says Jamar Chase had the best rookie receiving season ever. You're not drafting that this year. Here's the deal. So I get what you're saying. And I'm not saying that if the Browns get a receiver in this draft, they're going to put up that numbers. But as far as impact on the team, what Jamar Chase did for the Bengals is open everything up for the other guys. You saw the other list of guys on the Bengals at the receiver position just really step up. I can't believe that Jamar Chase was that big of an impact this early. But I think if the Browns play their cards right, and if you get a couple guys in free agency, I really like Allen Robinson. I really like DJ Chark, Christian Kirk as options to bring in for the Browns. You pair one or two of them guys with somebody in the draft, a Garrett Wilson, that threat where you have that new young blood who's kind of all around great. And I've been watching Garrett Wilson for a long time. Garrett Wilson is all around really, really good. Um, and Peter Powell says, no Burks, no London. We have enough receivers over 6'3". And that's kind of what I believe too. People get obsessed with the size, they get obsessed with the speed, but the reality is when it comes to what the Browns are going to be looking for at receiver in the draft, it's going to be quick route runners with good hands. And again, not that those guys aren't talented, not that Burks and London aren't talented. It's just the fact that I don't think the Browns need that right now. I think that DPJ plays that role good enough. So when you look at the draft, it's Chris Olave, it's Garrett Wilson, it's Jamison Williams. And then if you want to look later on, Wandale Robinson's really good for that role. And if you want to get a guy who's a bigger size guy who can move, I really like Pickens from Georgia. I really like David Bell. Justice Ross from Clemson is a guy that everybody's forgotten, but he has major injury history. But he's a guy when he was playing was looked at as a for sure first round pick. I mean, that's how good he is. And Matt Jenkins says you need to have one or what? You need to have more than one. If teams double chase, they can still beat you. And again, this is my point. The Browns have to completely retool. And if I'm Andrew Berry, I'm sitting back and I'm looking at what the Bengals offense did when you bring in a guy who's young, can do it all around great, and you pair him with these other guys, you can be really successful. And again, I'm not saying that they're going to be as good, but for a Browns offense that's desperately needing some sort of pass game, regardless of quarterback, and we'll get into that here in a minute, they have got to get better at the wide receiver position. So, and again, this is something that I thought the Browns should have pulled um, in that draft. I thought that there was a chance that the Browns did take CeeDee Lamb, and they ended up not taking him. He goes to the Dallas Cowboys. But again, there's another example of a receiver who comes into a room with a lot of other talented receivers and makes his impact because of the fact that he is overlooked. Maybe not now, but especially his rookie season when you got Amari Cooper and you have Michael Gallup, you can slide him in there and he can play a big role. So I agree with that. I think that the Browns need to do that. Um, Peter Powell says, "What do you think about a trade for Amari Cooper? He's a proven route runner to pair with the number 13 pick. Helps ease our rookie wide receiver into the system." I don't know. I think that money would have to play a big factor in that. I don't know how much they're going to be willing to give up to trade for a receiver. I know Calvin Ridley is intriguing. He fits what the Browns are looking for, exactly what Amari can do. Quick, great route runner, good hands. So I think as far as the trade market, I'm not expecting the Browns to make a move there unless it is a Brandon Cooks where you can probably get him cheaper. He doesn't want to be in Houston, and I think you would be able to bring him in for a cheap deal and get a pretty good impact out of him. So looking at Jamar Chase, you got to look at that and figure, okay, they did it with him. You have T. Higgins, you have Tyler Boyd, you have all these other receivers. And the difference is there, those guys have been in Cincinnati for a little while now, right? And they got the system. So it'll be a little bit different. But again, and I hate to keep repeating myself, but I think the Browns need to go out, retool, get much better talent at wide receiver, and then bring in somebody in the draft who can be an all-around impact guy. And just like CeeDee Lamb did, in his rookie year, kind of a little bit overlooked because of the other guys, play a big time role. I think that is a big deal. And another thing here that the Browns need to look at as far as what the Bengals did, kicker. We have had nothing but kicker problems. And yes, we did draft a kicker, um, Austin Seibert out of Oklahoma. He was one of the best in college football, gets to the NFL, and major struggles. So We've done it before, but I think kicker is one of these things you got to keep swinging on. You can get a proven guy. The guy from Atlanta, Koo, is a free agent. I would like to bring him in, but to me, I think kicker is a position that you gotta keep swinging at. Like, it doesn't matter how many you go through. There's so many teams that continuously go through kickers. You have got to keep swinging until you get one because it's such an important position. And especially a team like the Browns, a team that hasn't had a kicker in forever, or at least not consistently. And every that's the worst part. Every time we think we have one, give it a week or two, and that's over. It's very, very frustrating. And Matt says it's funny how everybody bashed the Bengals' strategy before the season of drafting receiver over O-line, and now they want to copy it. I agree. I think that that whole situation is a little bit different because of what you saw in the playoff game yesterday. Joe Burrow just got killed, repeatedly sacked. I think it was 9 times, but he still wins. And that's the biggest difference that I'm going to talk about here in a minute with Baker and Joe Burrow and what the Browns need to learn again from the Bengals at the quarterback position. Um, but yeah, the situation that the Bengals are in and why they scare me is because they are this talented now and they still have holes. They need to continue building on defense, even though they've had major upgrades from the year prior. You've had guys come in who weren't exactly, big impact guys on their previous teams, but come in and play a big time role. Trey Hendrickson was a guy who I hated, honestly, for the Browns. I did not want to sign him. I didn't think he was worth a big time contract. But for Cincy, he's playing very well and a good compliment to Sam Hubbard. So it's interesting. That whole strategy of take a wide receiver and then build your O line later is interesting. And I think that's what they're going to have to do this year, this offseason. Continue to build that offensive line. And it's not that they didn't try. Riley Reef, guys like that. I hated the Jackson Carman pick because I've known about him for a little bit now. He was a guy that Ohio State wanted who ended up going to Clemson. And I've kind of watched him because he was a guy that I wanted at Ohio State. And I've not been impressed with him. So that's something that the Bengals are going to have to do, put a lot of work in. But once they do, their offense is going to be unstoppable because one of the things that people complain about with the Bengals, Joe Mixon is constantly hurt, it seems. But you bring in a better O line, you're gonna protect Mixon and you're gonna protect Joe Burrow. And that on offense, that's really all you need. Um, I think defense maybe has a little bit more holes. They went out and signed a lot of guys. Mike Hilton was a big time impact player out of Pittsburgh. So the Bengals are legit. And that's terrifying because as quickly as they turned it around, they're competing to play in Super Bowls now. I mean, they're in the AFC Championship, and I hope they play the Bills because, as a Browns fan, I don't like the Bengals, but as an Ohio State fan, I'm happy for Joe Burrow. I'm happy to see that he's successful. Um, so that's the matchup I want to see as far as the AFC Championship. But the Browns should be embarrassed that a team like the Cincinnati Bengals came out this year and did what the Browns should have done as far as success, as far as everything that went right for them. Kevin Wiseman says, "How does a quick wide receiver combat a quarterback that holds on to the ball too long?" I completely agree. And here's the deal: if I was the general manager of this team, I would be looking into every single possibility at quarterback. I think that they're probably doing that now. I think that is a legitimate thing to say. They're going to look into Russ. They're going to look into Deshaun, all these guys you hear about. Um, but I think the reality is they're just not going to be able to get those guys. And for everybody who says, oh, Kirk Cousins, the new coach, the new GM, he's going to be a free agent next year. So I can't see them trading capital to get a guy right now, at a bigger contract if they can just sign him next year, and we can debate should they, but I just don't think they will. Um, Peter says there'll be plenty of undrafted kickers to choose from. I agree. But I think they still need to do their due diligence, and if it means taking a kicker in 6th round, 7th round, do it. Um, and then Matt Jenkins says Bengals have a lot of cap space too. And that's the thing, they're gonna have to spend it. And historically, the Bengals don't really spend that much money, but this past offseason, like I said a little bit ago, they came out, they spent the money, they get some of these guys, Trey Hendrickson, Mike Hilton, guys like that, bring them in, and they have immediate impacts. So to me, they played it smart for the most part. I don't agree with everything. Like I said, I would have picked Penei Sewell at the time. But again, you get a game breaker at wide receiver and it can open up everything. So that's what I think as far as the wide receiver position the Browns need to learn from the Bengals. Now let's talk about the quarterbacks. Joe Burrow is a guy who I got to see up close and personal at Ohio State. And I'm not saying this to try to say that I knew he would be good, but you could tell there was something about him, right? This is a guy who is very talented quarterback coming out of high school, comes to Ohio State in a loaded quarterback room at the time. Now, in hindsight, he's head and shoulders above JT Barrett, head and shoulders above Dwayne Haskins. But the whole situation of him getting injured, I believe he broke his hand, if I'm correct, then he ends up transferring. Now, it ended up being the best thing to happen for him because obviously he became the number one overall pick. That's a done deal. Um, but you could tell this guy was different. Like he just has it. And for him, for the past 2 seasons, he's been able to stand in the pocket, no fear, and despite the injury. I mean, a lot of times you see quarterbacks get injured like that, like Burrow had, come back and play afraid. He's not done that. He doesn't really care. He's going to stand in the pocket, go through his reads and hit his guy. So he's fearless and he's a leader and he's going to be a great quarterback for years to come. The problem is the Browns do not have that. Joe Burrow is not even close. I should say this. Baker is not even close to Joe Burrow. Not even remotely close. Everything that Joe Burrow does right, Baker does wrong. And I know this is a mostly Browns channel, but I, I don't care. Criticize me all you want. Joe Burrow stands in the pocket, doesn't worry about pressure, goes through his reads, hits his guys. Baker gets back in the pocket, panics, happy feet, double clutches, doesn't go through his reads. And a lot of times when he does throw the ball, it's either bad timing or maybe it's not the right read or he's just afraid. He's afraid. And Joe Burrow is fearless. And it amazes me, the Browns fans that will go through every excuse for Baker Mayfield and then talk about the flaws of all these other quarterbacks. Like I had, and I'm not calling out anybody, but one criticism I heard of Joe Burrow was, oh, he was holding on to the football too long. You know, he's to blame for a lot of the sacks. It's like, how can you criticize and nitpick for all these other quarterbacks, but not your own? Baker Mayfield is not better than Derek Carr. Baker Mayfield is not better than maybe Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, I think Jimmy's not a good cold weather quarterback. That's not what I'm saying. But as far as consistency, and this has been my problem, the Browns don't need an elite quarterback. They just need somebody who can do the job. Baker Mayfield right now cannot do the job. You can disagree with me. You can cry about it. You can complain. He's not playing good enough right now. And the problem with Browns fans is there are so many people who are willing to make excuses because of Baker's ceiling that they overlook his floor. Baker Mayfield's floor is terrifying because number one overall picks are supposed to do what Joe Burrow just did. Regardless of if things are going wrong, regardless of, the type of game you're in, whether if it's a prime time, cold weather, whatever, you do your job. You were picked number one overall to do your job. It doesn't mean you have to play great. Joe Burrow's stats were not fantastic, but at the end of the day, he got it done. That's what you're supposed to do as the number one overall pick. Baker Mayfield is a guy who shows flashes. Throughout his career, it's been a great year, or at least a really, really good year his first year, horrible his second year. Really, really good year last year. You know, it didn't happen till a little bit later in the season, but once he got it together, he was really good. Then this year, horrible. The problem is you look at the floor and you look at the ceiling. When Baker's at his best, he can be a borderline maybe top 10, maybe. And I say that because when he's on fire, he's on fire. Like he hits tight windows. He's very accurate. His arm strength is incredible. Um, but when he's at his worst, he's among the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. The stats do not lie. Look at the stats from this past year. Look at the stats from 2019. The only guys that Baker was better than this year was like Sam Darnold, like and guys like that. So I mean, you can say, you know, Browns fans say that Jimmy G isn't better than Baker. Say that Derek Carr isn't better than Baker. The stats do not lie. These guys are somewhat reliable. Now, Jimmy G's hurt every year. I get that. But when they're healthy and when they're playing, I trust Jimmy G. I trust Derek Carr. I trust guys like that, Kirk Cousins, more than Baker. And at the end of the day, when I talk about comparing the two franchises, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns right now, the Browns have the better roster. That's why it's so infuriating that we have to sit back and watch the Cincinnati Bengals play as well as they are right now and doing what the Browns should have done. And you can point the fingers at anybody you want to. Everybody shares a piece of blame, but I am unwilling to sit here and lie to you people and say that Baker Mayfield isn't the problem. Baker Mayfield has been a problem. You got to accept it. I mean, there's no beating around the bush. And Peter, I agree with you. I think that he's lost confidence, but you can't just bring that back. And to all the people who are assuming that Baker is all of a sudden next year going to be incredible. Sure, the stats and the trajectory of his career right now say yes. He's going to play solid next year because every other year he plays solid. But if Baker comes out and plays fine next year, cool. Great. That's awesome. What do you do the year after that? We've not seen him put back to back good seasons, and that is a problem. He's not reliable. I am not willing to waste years of Nick Chubb, years of Kareem Hunt, years of Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward over Baker Mayfield. He's not the guy that we drafted him to be. And Matt Jenkins, Burrow threw for 350 yards while getting sacked 9 times. Reliable. Joe Burrow is reliable. You can trust him. The Bengals trust him. Baker Mayfield is not trustable. He's not reliable. He's not consistent. So the Browns as an organization right now have to sit back, look at what the Bengals have right now. They don't have a better roster than you, but what they did was they went out, addressed the wide receiver position on top of what they already had, brought in a game-breaking wide receiver in Jamar Chase in the first round, which is a big deal because that allows you 5 years, if you wanted it, 4 years plus the 5th-year option of elite wide receiver play. That's why it is so important that the Browns stick to 13 and take a wide receiver. I know it's a deep class. I know that there's a lot of guys in this draft. And it may be that a Treylon Burks later on ends up being the best. I don't know. That's not my job to tell you. But the Browns need a young, game breaking wide receiver next season from the draft. So, again, the whole wide receiver thing, they need to learn from what the Bengals as an organization did there. And at quarterback, Joe Burrow should be the standard of this division. The Browns have got to hold Baker Mayfield to a Joe Burrow standard. That means you need to be reliable, you need to be consistent, you need to be the leader. Baker, when he first came into the NFL, sure. You know, I could say he was reliable. He got the job done. He was fairly consistent. He struggled against better teams, better defenses his rookie year, but it was nothing to really be scared of. You know, it was nothing that really concerned you. And it felt like over time that was just going to keep improving. It's regressed, and it's regressed big time. So again, I think that Baker Mayfield has become such a polarizing figure that if the Browns did not take him number 1 overall, let's just say he was the 4th overall pick, hypothetically, do you look at this the same way? And I know people say if he was a 3rd round pick, he would have been off the team a while ago, which, you may be right. I don't know. But the fact that they picked him number 1 overall, and again, they didn't pick him. Andrew Berry did not pick him. Kevin Stefanski did not pick him. That's something big to factor in. The fact that he was a number 1 overall pick is the reason why they keep giving him chances and why they will probably, and again, I think it's likely, give him a chance next season because they right now are tied to him. And I think, and I'll just go ahead and play this now. I played this clip um the other day. I forget when it was. I want to say it was yesterday or the day before, with Cam when I had him on here talking about a lot of the Brown stuff. But this is from ESPN Cleveland. And like I said in that video, this is not my clip. This is from ESPN Cleveland, like I said. So I don't own it. It's not mine. But I agree with everything he says here. And I want to play this because I think it's important because I can sit here and tell you every reason why I think what I do. But people have this in their minds that they are the only correct ones. And I've always said it's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. It is what it is. But I think it's important to get a collective of opinions. So I'm going to go ahead and play this here, and then I'll talk about it after it's done. It's like a minute long. So here it is.
Philosophically speaking, not who's available, not who thing, not going through the process over the next 3 months. To make the decision in Berea, the philosophical question of whether or not the Browns should move on from Baker Mayfield. Tony, we've seen him for 4 years. I'm guessing the guys that, study football and scout football for a living probably have an idea of what they think Baker is. With that said, philosophically, the Browns are ready to move on from Baker Mayfield. Might not happen because of details of who they get or who they get. The reason he is on social media defending himself, he looks nervous, is that he kind of gets it too. Tony, in the building, they're in the building, they're ready to move on.
Wow. And again, I agree with everything he just said. I think that it's not a matter of the Browns needing to see more. I think they've seen everything they needed to because this is not John Dorsey. This is not Freddie Kitchens. This is AB. I almost said Antonio Brown. It's Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. They want to move on. Like they are not sold on Baker Mayfield. And for everybody who read and watched Andrew Berry's press conference and said, "Oh, see, he said, he fully expects him." Listen, he's not going to come out and say that, "Oh, Baker sucks. We don't want him," whatever. That he's just not going to do that. So it doesn't mean that they won't look into options. They will. But right now, I don't believe that Andrew Berry is willing to give up this team's future for a guy who, can come in and play the quarterback position in a more consistent way. I don't think they're going to do that. And again, if this was a great quarterback draft class, by the way, the Browns are picking a quarterback. Like breaking news, they would pick a quarterback. But right now they're in a position where they don't have a ton of options. And the options that they do have as far as free agency would be to bring in competition. It wouldn't be bringing a starter. And the trade options would be somebody that they would have to probably give up too much that they don't want to give up to get. So they're not going to do that. And I think that the reality is they've seen everything they need to, but they're kind of handcuffed right now. And Baker does have talent. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying that he's useless and he sucks. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm trying to get across is Baker Mayfield's ceiling is not worth waiting around to see if it's going to be consistent to risk the floor right now. If the Browns were a team that wasn't finished and wasn't completely built and had a lot of holes, then I would be on board. Hey, you're not going to win now, whatever, keep him. But that's not the case. We're in a different situation right now. And for everybody who says that Baker Mayfield is the one who turned everything around, no, he's not. No, he's not. Comparing Baker Mayfield to the past quarterbacks of the Browns means nothing. Comparing Baker to Deshaun Kaiser, to Brian Hoyer, it means nothing. So stop saying that he was the greatest quarterback since, so and so. It doesn't matter. If you were comparing Baker Mayfield to somebody before who was played competent football, that would be different. That would be different. But you cannot sit here and say just because Baker's been the only decent quarterback that the Browns have had in a long time, that does not mean that they should not look into other options. It's just a stupid argument. Um, and Peter says not defending Baker's poor play, but he's been frustrating at many points. I think he hasn't been in a stable enough situation to fairly evaluate him. Just sucks because we're running out of time. Here's the thing with that. Baker has had multiple different coaches, multiple different offenses, multiple different teammates around him, wide receiver, offensive line. It's just, it has been a lot of dysfunction and constant change. But at the end of the day, this is year two of Kevin Stefanski's offense. You can say what you want about Odell Beckham Jr., you can say what you want about all the guys the Browns have. They have talented guys. Odell Beckham Jr., I took Baker's side on that. I thought that Baker or OBJ was just, not that guy anymore. I thought that he, was more of a problem than he was an asset. But you look at it now, guess what? He's catching touchdowns. He's making plays, and yes, I do believe that it's partially because he's the number 2 receiver with Cooper Kupp, but still. And again, right here, shoot to throw. Talent is talent, and it'll show either way. Regardless, if Baker Mayfield was the guy that everybody thought he was after his rookie year, we wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion. It's not easy to deal with the constant change and coordinators and coaches. I get that. But this is year 2 of Kevin Stefanski's offense. And for everybody to say that injuries played a big part, yes, of course, injuries played a part in it. But I saw Baker Mayfield play competent football this year after the injury. So is it Baker's injuries that's the problem, or is it just him? Because to me, his problems is not that he's not talented. It's not that at all. It's his mind. He doesn't have what it takes inside of his head. And that's the issue we keep seeing. He doesn't know when to throw the ball and when not to. He's not great at reading defenses. He's uncomfortable in the pocket. It has to be literally perfect for him. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And people hear that and they laugh at it. Take your Browns fan glasses off. Take them off. Look around the NFL. Look at what the Browns have and look at what they're putting him in right now. They're not asking him to do a lot. And I'm tired of the excuses. I'm tired of it. Because if Baker Mayfield was in any other organization, they would not be sitting here making excuses just because he had 2 solid years. It would be one thing if Baker was playing at a top 10, borderline top 5 level when he was at his best, but he wasn't. He was playing borderline top 10, probably more towards 15, 13, 14, 15 when he's at his best. That's a reality. Hard pill to swallow, but it's time to swallow it. All right. And I know that's probably going to be clipped out and taken out of context. But anyway, um, Peter says ultimately I agree, but because if you have to question if he's the guy, he's not the guy. Just don't know what we do at the future of the quarterback position. Matt Jenkins says, I think the small mobile quarterback trend will go away as none of them advance in the playoffs. And Shoot to Thrill says 2023 draft simple. Yeah. Here's the deal. So first I'll address what Peter said. He said, ultimately, I agree. If you have to question if he's the guy, he's not. Yeah, the constant change plays a part, yes, but we've had 4 years. 4 years. If you had, and I'm not bringing up politics, but, if you had a president that, you didn't know what he was, right? You had an idea of what he wanted to do, whatever, but you didn't know how he would execute, if he would get what he wanted to say or what he wanted done. Over the course of 4 years, you should be able to look back and say, okay, you came in, you ran off of these things. Did you do them? Okay. It doesn't mean you have to do all of them. Obviously, things are complicated. But if none of that was done or one or two things were done, it's a failure. It's a failure. That's how we have to look at the situation. Um, Shoot to Thrill says he'll play his 5th-year option. 2023 will draft a real quarterback. That's probably what happens. But it's going to be hard because you're going to have to probably trade up because the Browns roster is so talented right now that Baker Mayfield playing bad is a 9-win, 8-win year. And that's not going to get you a number 1, number 2 pick, whatever. So they're going to have to trade up, which I think, again, you take this year, bring in receivers, bring in an offensive tackle, bring in a defensive tackle, just address these little needs. Obviously, receiver's not a little need, but again, the Browns roster is so good. Like it's people think it's just garbage. No, you're getting garbage from your quarterback. And for everybody who blames Kevin Stefanski, sure, he gets a portion of the blame, but to sit here and lie and say that he's to blame for everything is laughable. It's laughable. Go back and watch the 2020 Browns offense. He passed way more. Do you think he wants to do that? Of course. It's not that he doesn't want to throw. He can't because he doesn't have a quarterback. Or at least not right now. So the roster is too good to be low enough to draft a top guy. We cannot wait around for rookie mistakes. It's it's frustrating. It's so frustrating because again, everybody wants to talk about how bad the Browns quarterbacks have been throughout history, right? Baker Mayfield to me is the most disappointing because you look at the history of the Browns quarterbacks, they didn't take Deshaun Kaiser number 1 overall. They didn't take Johnny Manziel number 1 overall. They didn't take Brandon Weeden number 1 overall. Those guys were not expected to come in and be the guy. Those were guys that they liked and they took a shot on. Now they passed up on a bunch of guys, but the reality is Baker's the most disappointing because he's shown signs of being a good quarterback, but at the end of the day, it's just not consistent. And you don't have time to wait around, And I understand all the people who love Baker and think that he's talented and all that. I agree with you. He is very talented, but that's not the issue. It's floor and ceiling. The floor is not good enough to wait around to try to reach the ceiling. Bottom line. So, it is what it is there. And it's very frustrating that the Cincinnati Bengals have Joe Burrow, who is what we hoped Baker would be. And that's the one thing that Bengals fans keep saying. And I see a lot of Browns fans all upset about it. It's the truth. It's the truth. Joe Burrow does what a number 1 pick is supposed to. Baker doesn't. Bottom line. It's that simple. Shoot to Thrill says exactly what you can, knowing what you know, and trade up in 2023, get a good quarterback. It's going to be hard because I think you're going to see quarterbacks probably go 1 and 2. I thought that Bryce Young was a freshman this year, but I'm seeing people have him in the mock drafts for next year. I'd have to double check, but I know Stroud's going to be in there for sure. I think to me, being an Ohio State guy, I'd love CJ Stroud. He's a real quarterback. Um, I love Bryce Young too, but outside of that, I think we're gonna have to wait and see who kind of steps up. Who's gonna be the Zach Wilson? Who's gonna be the Kenny Pickett of next year? Guys who you don't really know right now who are gonna step up. Um, Peter says, I really like drafting a development QB for the future this year. He can sit and learn while also being the backup for this year. I don't know if there are a ton of guys um, who you can do that with. I don't know. Carson Strong to me would be the only guy that I would, but at the same time, he might not be a guy that you're going to be able to get later. I don't think the Browns should draft a quarterback in the second round because I don't think there's talent, there to be picked, unless a Malik Willis fell or somebody like that. But I don't see that happening. Um, Tyrone says you ranting and raving about Baker and offering solutions is not productive. That doesn't make any sense. First of all, you spelled about wrong. Um, and offering solutions is the whole conversation here. It's not like I'm not saying the Browns can't look at this route. Um, I'm saying they're going to look into everything. They will look into every trade option, every free agency option. My thing is, right now, I don't think you're going to be able to trade for somebody. So you're going to have to sign somebody to be a competent backup. And you're going to have to roll with Baker. It is what it is. Next year, or I'm sorry, not next year, the year after this season, rather, they have to get a quarterback. Like, it is what it is. Um, Peter, you're talking about round 4 and 5. There's a couple guys. I'm forgetting names, but I know there's a couple guys that people really like from small schools. Could be a possibility. I don't see it happening personally. But it is what it is. You're gonna see a lot of talent that gets picked later. And this is the one thing I said, especially at wide receiver. There's going to be guys picked late second round, early third round who will be highly, highly impact guys, right? So, it's going to be interesting, but I don't think the Browns are in a position right now to draft a developmental guy because if you're talking about, and again, um, Bailey, I don't know how to pronounce that. Zap, maybe Zape, whatever. I like him. I've seen a little bit of his tape, but to me, he is a 2 to 3 year developmental guy to see if he's even anything at all. Uh, hey Brian, Cole Kelly. I don't know anything about him. That's somebody I can look into, but I think at this point they're kind of handcuffed right now. But a big, big, big thing for me. Bring in somebody who can compete and be capable. Because Case Keenum, to me is a waste of money right now. Um, he's got a veteran NFL mind, sure. He succeeded in Kevin Stefanski's offense, but he's not a guy that I'm comfortable with, as a backup or to compete. I'm just not comfortable with it. I think that Nick Mullins did a better job, as a backup. So, Shoot to Throw says easy thing would be pick a guy up in free agency at quarterback that could play, sign him to a 2-year contract deal, draft quarterback in 2023. Quarterbacks will be out there, I guess. We'll see. Free agency quarterbacks. Yeah, it's good. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing where the Browns are at right now. The good thing is the bad season you had is going to allow you to get a great player at 13. And again, I think it's going to be receiver. It's what they should do. But the bad thing is it's going to be really risky here because I think you're wasting another year. Um, Not that the Browns can't get back to the playoffs because Baker's proven they can with him. but it's about taking that next step. It's about getting to the next level, playing consistently, using the guys you have right now, you know? So again, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. It's a hard job that Andrew Berry has right now. And obviously the best case scenario is Baker just all of a sudden turns into the franchise quarterback that we hope, that plays consistent and plays at a high level. But I have zero trust in that. Zero. Not even one. I have zero trust in Baker because, again, for everybody saying that, we've seen him play at a high level before, and he can still be that guy. I was saying that. I was saying that back in 2019, and I thought it was over. But we're looking down the barrel of a Baker Mayfield playing bad every other year. Prove me wrong. Every other year has been the same thing. And his ceiling so far, based on what we've seen, is good. It's really good, but it's not good enough, in my opinion, to compete at a high level. You know, it is what it is. Um, says the dude Baker fanboys all up in here, a bunch of nut riders. Yeah, it's embarrassing how you can constantly criticize other teams' quarterbacks and look at all these different other options and tear these quarterbacks down, but there are people who just do not even remotely criticize Baker like it's illegal, like you just can't do it. It's like we're in North Korea or something, and Baker's Kim Jong Un. It's hilarious. It's comedy because if you can't objectively look at what's going on right now, I don't know what to tell you. And again, and me and Brian agree with this. I think Baker can be a good quarterback. I think he can become a consistent quarterback. We don't have time to wait another 3, 4 years for that. He needs to end up in a place like New Orleans with Sean Payton if he's going to be the coach there long term, which again, that was something that came up today. We'll have to see. He's not committed for next year, but you get him with Sean Payton, a guy who has had Drew Brees, similar size, and maybe he can become something, but nothing's guaranteed in the NFL, right? And I think at the end of the day, Baker Mayfield is just a big question mark right now. Um, it is what it is. It is what it is. Um, read this comment here. Good evening from the UK. Thanks for watching. That's pretty cool to have somebody outside the country watching. He says, been a Browns fans for years. Let's keep it honest. The Dogs have not found their quarterback. Joe Burrow is going to be elite and will keep the Bengals competitive for years. That's one of my biggest problems right now with Baker. The roster we have right now isn't going to be here forever. It's just not. It's a reality. He's not. It's not going to be like this forever. Nick Chubb's not going to be like this forever. So you got to roll with what you got right now as far as the roster goes. And you got to get the best out of the roster right now. You can continue to draft and bring in guys, but it's very hard to stay this good for a long time. And the biggest thing about staying good is having a quarterback. Joe Burrow is going, as long as he can stay healthy, Joe Burrow is going to be a great quarterback for a long time. And it's the same thing, in my opinion, with Justin Herbert. And, I understand these guys are really young. I get that. I got it. But there's just something that you can see in these quarterbacks, whether if they have it or not. Ryan Tannehill, he can be good for you in the regular season. He could play at a decently good level, but he's not going to be a guy that you can win long term and sustain success with. Same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's a reason why they took Trey Lance. The Browns have got to learn this. They don't have that guy right now. And again, I'm not rooting against Baker. I hope he becomes successful. But if you even remotely criticize him, you're just a hater anymore. Um, it is what it is. So, but anyway, I just wanted to talk about this for a little bit. So, again, I hope we get a Bengals Bills AFC Championship game. That would be fun to watch. But I think the Browns need to really look at what the Bengals, um, did as far as wide receiver and, turning a roster that wasn't really that great, um, into a roster right now that's playing at a high level because of great quarterback play and because of getting a game breaking wide receiver. I don't think the Browns can get great quarterback play. They can get good enough quarterback play, but as far as this year, look at what the Bengals did with Jamar Chase. Look at what they did getting T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. The Browns need to follow that kind of path, do something like that. So, anyway, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. I appreciate it. And I'll have more, later. I know we're in the off season, but we'll be talking about this for a long time. So, anyway, I should say, thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.